Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. It's a real honour to be here today and have the opportunity to present to you a very quick, and I think I'm going to be the shortest and snappiest presentation of the day, but a very quick run through some of the key messages that we got out of some market research that we did. Field work was done in October, so before Rachel Reeves's budget. Some of what you may see might be slightly altered by one or two things that have come out of that, but I'm sure you'll understand what those are. The background to this, I'm going to run through very quickly. I'll talk through who was involved, the methodology, and then the most important thing, the key findings and the takeaways. In terms of just acknowledging that the research was actually carried out using a third-party research agency called Kinetic. So we're grateful to them for pulling the project together and getting the results to us. In terms of why we did the research, well, there were about 5 or so key things that we were particularly keen to cover. One was to get a bit of understanding amongst the farming sector in terms of where we are on this digital journey. The second was to try and explore some of the key issues that exist. The third was to allow us to try and get some focus around those, and that's partly what's driven some of the content and the presentations you're going to hear today. And then most importantly, to share those results with you as a stimulus to actually create some action and some activity during today's conference and beyond. So in terms of the participants and the methodology, we conducted the research across 200 growers. They were all arable farmers or arable and mixed farming. Everyone had a minimum of 100 hectare size farm. They were telephone interviews conducted one-to-one, and we interviewed either the key decision maker in the business or one of the joint decision makers in the business. And we had a pretty good spread across England and Scotland in terms of the geographic spread of the research. Slightly less representation in the northeast and the northwest, but as you can see from these numbers, it's a fairly even split of the country in terms of who we spoke to. So looking at then the key findings, the most important one, I think, and most pleasing one really, is that as an industry, you appear to be backing digital technology to help you in the way you run your businesses and the way that you will run your businesses in the future. But what I'm going to do now is just run you through some of the key graphs and charts that came out of the research and some of the key messages that we found. So number one was we asked you which precision agriculture tools that you used in your businesses. Happily for Dennis today, the number one that came out was my John Deere and Green Star, but also followed by Trimble, Soil Class and our own Omnia solution as well. We then asked you about mobile apps that you use that are relevant to you in agriculture. Not surprisingly, weather app, number one, but really interesting to see how many of you are now using What 3 Words, which I suspect has become a really valuable tool in terms of getting things dropped off to the right locations on the farm. And then there were a number of other apps that were reasonably popular as well. We asked you about farming operations that you felt that digital and precision tools were being used for. 3/4 of you said that you were using auto steer, and 40% of you said that you were using variable rate application technology, either for fertilizer spreading or for drilling, for seeding. The question that Andrew just asked a moment ago about challenges in farming was obviously asked before the budget at the end of October, and actually fairly aligned with what you've just said today on the Slido poll, notwithstanding the uncertainty that now exists. But climate change, 72% of you said that you saw climate change as being the biggest challenge in farming. And I don't think we're surprised by that. When I talk to farmers now, they tend to say that it used to be one bad weather year in 5, and now it's kind of almost like one good weather year in 5, and it sort of seems to have flipped on its head. But sort of hot on the heels of that was, around half of you said that the cost of inputs, the prices that you were getting for what you were producing, and ultimately overall farm profitability were also significant challenges in the business. So what about the future of digital technology? Half of you said that digital technology was of increasing importance to what you do. And actually, when we sifted those results by the largest farms, so that was 1,000 hectares or more, that actually rose to 2/3 of the interviewees said that digital technology was of increasing importance. We then asked you to rank the importance of data-driven decision-making in the business, 0 being not important at all, 10 being very, very important. Really pleasing to see a large majority saw data decision-making as important in the future, and actually 2/3 of you rated that as a 6 or more. What about drivers of usage? Well, I think as with most things in farming, you as farmers tend not to adopt new technology unless you can see that there's a kind of return on it. And so for you, number one, if you're going to take this stuff on, is you want to be able to drive cost out of the business. There were other things around yield improvement, efficiencies, and actually being given incentives, grant incentives to adopt some of this technology actually was 4th on the list. But as I say, not surprising that trying to take cost out of the business was seen as a real driver for usage. What about farming activities that digital technology could improve? Well, half said that actually meeting the requirements of farm audits, of compliance with schemes that you may be applying for, was actually probably the biggest area where you felt digital technology could help you. But then 1/3 of you also cited things like soil management, doing things like mapping your environmental credentials, carbon accounting, stock taking and record keeping, and disease monitoring as well. Then there are the barriers to usage. What's actually stopping you doing some of this stuff? 70% of you said that cost and return on investment was the top barrier to adopting the solution. So quite clearly, if you adopt it, you wanted to save costs in the business, but if you're going to adopt it, you want to see that return on investment. And I think that's no great surprise. The ability to integrate solutions between each other is really important to you. And actually amongst the larger farms, it wasn't just the largest, but the larger farms, so I think sort of 500 hectares plus, that was actually ranked as 2nd when we filtered the results. And from one of the other bits of research, 1/4 of you actually said that solution integration was going to be important in the future if it isn't being achieved at the moment. Then there's your confidence. How do you actually feel about using this stuff? Well, really happily, 3/4 of you ranked this as a 5 or more. Again, 0 being not confident at all, 10 being super confident. But going back to some of the other research, we put that across the fact that 1/3 of you said you were insufficiently aware of what was actually available out there in terms of digital technology, and 20% of you said you either didn't have the time, there wasn't enough training, or there was a lack of sort of technology support was the sort of key barrier to getting on this journey. Not surprisingly, the early adopters amongst you, and we asked that question a moment ago, and we asked a similar question in the research in terms of how you saw yourself as either an early adopter or maybe more of a follower of technology. And it wasn't surprising that the early adopters amongst you were really positive about this stuff. On the bigger farms, against those challenges that we talked about, staffing was cited as a major issue on the bigger farms, and not surprisingly then, actually those farms also saw that digital technology might be able to help them with work and resource planning. I've put this one up here as well because Susanna will be talking a little bit later about data governance and security and ownership of data, but it was just interesting to see that nearly 20% of you, so nearly 1 in 5 of you, so that's pretty well 100 out of the 500 or so of you here today, saw the issues around data ownership and data security as being really important to you. So in terms of takeaways, what are the kind of key messages? I mean, number one is that you are feeling pretty confident about this stuff, and I think that's really, really encouraging. There clearly are opportunities for businesses that are supplying technology to do a better job in training and awareness and support. But it is clear that adoption of technology, of this sort of technology, is now embedded in the way you are starting to run your businesses. Saving costs is a driver. Half can see that digital technology is improving compliance, will help improving there, and 2/3 see that data and decision making is really important. So there's 2 questions that I've been asked just to put in front of you from a Slido point of view. So if you get your phones out and get ready for these. So question number 1 is, what new technology has delivered the most for you? So about half of you, farm management software, and around sort of 18% around self-guided machines. Okay? And the second question then is, these technologies are close to coming to market. Which one are you most excited about?
Yeah.
Well, clearly we've got reasonably good phone signal coverage in here today anyway, so that seems to be working. There we go. So there's a message for the government, if ever there was one.
Absolutely.
As if they didn't need any more messages, but anyway. Okay, very good.
Thank you very much
Julian.
indeed,
Whistle stop tour. Thank you.